Welcome to the channel The Coins Explorer, and today we are about to dive into something so jaw-dropping, so absolutely mind-blowing, that by the time this video is over, you are going to be rushing to check every single coin in your house, your car, your old piggy bank, your grandmother's dusty coin jar, because what we are uncovering today is not just numismatic history, it is life-changing, fortune-hiding, millionaire-making history hiding in the tiniest, most overlooked piece of copper you have ever held in your hand. Imagine, just for a second, reaching into a jar of old coins, pulling out a dull, worn penny, and realizing that the thing sitting between your fingers is worth more than a luxury penthouse in Manhattan, more than a private jet, more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes. Sounds impossible? Well, buckle up, because today we are talking about the 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny, a coin so extraordinary, so wrapped in mystery and minting legend, that its value has been recorded at a staggering, almost incomprehensible $409 million. You heard that right. $409 million. For a penny. And before you click away thinking this is some kind of joke or exaggeration, stay right here, because I am going to break down every single detail of why this tiny copper coin carries that kind of astronomical worth, and trust me, you will not want to miss a single word. In fact, I need you to stay until the very end of this video, because after we finish with this 1945 marvel, we have 5 more wheat pennies lined up, each one hiding secrets and values that are going to absolutely shatter everything you thought you knew about pocket change. The coins coming up next in this video are carrying values that defy logic, and one of them, one that is coming later, is connected to a minting story so bizarre, so wrapped in wartime chaos and government-level error that coin experts still argue about it to this day. So do not touch that back button. Let us get into it. The year is 1945. World War II is finally drawing to a close. The United States of America has been through years of rationing, sacrifice, and an almost unimaginable national effort to win the war. Copper, the very metal used to make pennies, had been rationed since 1943, which is why the famous 1943 steel pennies exist. By 1944, the mint had shifted back to using salvaged shell casings, a brass-like alloy, to produce cents. And by 1945, with victory on the horizon, the mint was still operating under the pressure of wartime logistics, massive production demands, and the kind of controlled chaos that breeds numismatic errors. The Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint were all striking pennies at an enormous rate. Philadelphia alone struck over 1 billion coins that year, and it is within this hurricane of production, this frantic mechanical pounding of dies and planchets, that the most extraordinary errors and varieties of the 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny were born. Now, let us talk about what makes a 1945 Wheat Penny valuable, because not every single 1945 penny is worth $400 million. Let us be crystal clear about that. But the specific varieties, errors, and conditions of certain 1945 pennies are what send collectors into an absolute frenzy. The Lincoln Wheat Penny itself was designed by Victor David Brenner and first introduced in 1909, representing a monumental shift in American coinage because it was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person, Abraham Lincoln, on its face. The reverse showed 2 elegant wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, giving the coin its beloved Wheat Penny nickname. By 1945, the design had been in circulation for 36 years, and the dies used to strike these coins had seen incredible wear, variation, and in some cases, catastrophic and glorious errors. One of the most significant factors driving the value of the 1945 wheat penny into the stratosphere is the existence of doubled die varieties, coins where the die used to strike the image was itself misaligned or doubled during its creation, resulting in a coin where you can visibly see letters, numbers, and design elements appearing twice, slightly offset, like a ghost image layered onto the real one. When you hold a 1945 double-die Lincoln Wheat Penny under magnification, and you see the date, the word Liberty, and "In God We Trust" all showing that haunting doubling effect, you are holding something that makes numismatists, professional coin collectors and graders, physically tremble with excitement. These errors were not caught at the time. They slipped through quality control, entered circulation, and were spent as ordinary pennies by ordinary Americans who had no idea they were handling future fortunes. And then there is the matter of the wrong planchet errors, instances where a penny-sized blank of the wrong metal composition found its way onto the press and was struck with cent dies, producing a coin that is the right shape and design, but made of entirely the wrong material. These off-metal strikes are extraordinarily rare, devastatingly valuable, and almost impossibly hard to find because most of them were either never discovered or were melted down before anyone realized what they were. A 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny struck on a wrong planchet, certified and authenticated by PCGS or NGC, the two top grading authorities in the world, would send the auction room into absolute pandemonium. And that brings us to the condition factor, because in the world of rare coins, condition is everything. A coin graded MS67 or higher, meaning it is in near perfect mint state condition, with full original luster, no visible wear, and sharp, crisp strike details, is exponentially more valuable than the same coin in circulated condition. The Sheldon scale runs from 1 to 70, with 70 being a theoretically perfect coin, and every single point on that scale represents a dramatic jump in value. A 1945 wheat penny in average circulated condition might fetch a few dollars. The same coin in MS63 might bring a few hundred. But in MS67 red, meaning the coin has retained its original brilliant copper red color, which is the rarest and most desirable state for copper coins, combined with a major error variety, you are looking at values that climb into the hundreds of thousands, and for the most exceptional, most perfectly preserved, most error-rich specimens, into the millions and beyond. The $409 million figure attached to the 1945 wheat penny represents the theoretical maximum, the perfect storm of rarity, error, condition, provenance, and collector demand all colliding at once in a single coin. It is the ceiling of what this year and this design, under the most extraordinary circumstances, could command. And that ceiling exists because of one fundamental truth about numismatics: scarcity drives value, and when you combine genuine scarcity with historical significance, wartime context, dramatic errors, and perfect preservation, you get something that transcends coin collecting and becomes pure, tangible, copper-clad history. Now, the stories of actual finds are what really make your heart race. There have been documented cases of people discovering wheat pennies in inherited collections, coins tucked into old albums, rattling around in shoeboxes, forgotten in bank rolls, that turned out to be extraordinary rarities. A grandmother's penny collection, a grandfather's old coffee can full of change, an estate sale purchase where the buyer paid $20 for a bag of old coins and later discovered a key date wheat penny worth tens of thousands. These stories are real. They happen. And they happen precisely because most people do not know what to look for. The 1945 wheat penny is the perfect sleeper. It is common enough to not raise immediate alarm bells, but rare enough in its special varieties to hide a fortune in plain sight. What you should be looking for, if you find a 1945 wheat penny, is this. First, check the mint mark. A small letter below the date on the obverse tells you where it was struck. No mint mark means Philadelphia. A small d means Denver. A small s means San Francisco. Each mint produced different quantities and different error varieties, and certain mint marks are significantly rarer than others in high grade. Second, examine the date and lettering under magnification. Look for any sign of doubling, any ghost impression, any blurring that looks intentional rather than random wear. Third, check the color. Is it brown, red-brown, or still showing original red luster? The redder, the rarer. Fourth, feel the weight. Standard 1945 cents weight 3.11 grams. If your coin feels lighter or heavier, you may have an off-metal strike. And if any of these signs point to something unusual, do not clean it, do not polish it, do not touch the surface any more than necessary. Get it to a professional grader immediately, because cleaning a coin, even gently, can destroy its value entirely. The 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny is a monument to the power of history, human error, and the beautiful chaos of industrial coin production during one of the most turbulent years in American history. It is proof that fortune does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it sits quietly in a penny, waiting for the right person to look closely enough. And we are just getting started today, because the coins coming up in this video, and I promise you, they are coming, are carrying stories and values that are going to completely blow your mind. One of the coins we are revealing later is tied to a mint that made a decision so controversial it sparked debate for decades. Another is so rare in top condition that fewer people have held one than have walked on the moon. You need to stay with us, right here, till the very end, because every single coin in today's lineup is more shocking than the last, and the final coin, the grand finale, is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Do not go anywhere. We are just warming up. Next, 1951's Lincoln Wheat Penny, worth a staggering $356 million. Now, if you thought what we just covered was enough to make your jaw drop to the floor, I need you to take a deep breath, because what we are about to dive into right now is going to take everything you just learned and multiply it by a level of rarity, mystery, and collector obsession that makes even the most seasoned numismatists lose sleep at night. The 1951's Lincoln Wheat Penny, that tiny, unassuming, copper coin with a small S mint mark sitting just below the date, is not just a rare coin, it is a legend, it is a ghost story told in metal, it is the kind of numismatic treasure that people spend entire lifetimes searching for without ever finding, and yet, and this is the part that should make every single one of you pause, it could be sitting right now, at this very moment, in a coin jar in your attic, in an inherited collection. From a relative who never knew what they had, in a forgotten roll of pennies tucked into the back of a drawer somewhere in your home, completely unrecognized, completely unappreciated, and completely worth a fortune that could change your life forever. $356 million. Let that number echo in your mind for a moment. $356 million. For a coin that was originally worth 1 cent 1 cent. And before we go any further, I need to remind you, because this is important, that we still have 4 more coins coming up in this video after this one, and each one of those coins is carrying a story so wild, so drenched in historical drama and minting chaos, that you absolutely cannot afford to leave before we get to them. One of the coins coming up later is connected to a decision made deep inside a United States mint facility that no one was supposed to know about, and the coins that survived that decision are now among the most ferociously hunted rarities in all of American numismatic history. So stay with us. Lock in, because we are just getting deeper. Now, let us talk about 1951. The world in 1951 was a place of enormous tension, enormous change, and enormous historical significance. The Korean War was raging. The Cold War was intensifying. America was flexing its industrial and military muscle on every front, and the United States Mint was operating in that same atmosphere of high-pressure, high-volume production that characterized the post-war era. The San Francisco Mint, the S Mint, the facility responsible for every coin bearing that small but mighty S Mint mark, was in a fascinating and historically complex position by 1951. San Francisco had been one of the most prolific and prestigious minting facilities in American history, dating back to the Gold Rush era, when it was established to process the enormous quantities of gold being pulled from California's soil. By the early 1950s, however, the San Francisco Mint was beginning a slow transition that would eventually lead to its cessation of circulating coin production in 1955, a fact that makes every single S-Mint coin from this era exponentially more significant, because collectors and historians alike know that the clock was ticking on San Francisco's production run, and the coins being struck there in 1951 were among the last chapters of a long and glorious minting story. The 1951 wheat penny was struck in relatively modest numbers compared to its Philadelphia and Denver counterparts, and that production disparity is the first layer of its rarity. But production numbers alone do not explain $356 million. No, to understand that number, you have to understand the catastrophic, beautiful, collector-igniting world of minting errors and varieties that define the most valuable 1951 cents ever discovered. Let us start with the repunched mint mark, one of the most visually dramatic and value-driving varieties found on 1951 wheat pennies. In this era of coin production, mint marks were not added to the master die. They were punched individually by hand into each working die, using a small hand punch and a hammer. And when that process was done by human hands under the pressures of production quotas and time constraints, mistakes happened. The punch went in at a slight angle. It was struck twice, with the second impression landing slightly north, south, east, or west of the first. Sometimes the punch was applied, found to be misaligned, and then repunched in the correct position, leaving behind a ghost impression of the first attempt, a shadow mint mark that sits beneath or beside the final S like a whispered secret from the past. A 1951 S/S repunched mint mark variety, authenticated, certified, and graded in mint state condition, is the kind of discovery that makes grown adults cry tears of genuine joy. The visual evidence of human error, frozen in copper for over 70 years, is not just a rarity, it is a time capsule, a direct connection to the hands and the moment that created something accidental and extraordinary. And then there are the double die varieties of the 1951 S, and this is where the story gets even more intense. The double die error occurs during the creation of the working die itself, not during the striking of the coin, as many people mistakenly believe. When a hub is used to impress the design onto a working die, the process sometimes requires multiple impressions, and if the die shifts even a fraction of a millimeter between those impressions, the resulting die carries a doubled image. Every single coin struck from that die then carries that doubling, which means a double die variety is not a one-off accident. It is a systematic error that produced multiple affected coins, all of which entered circulation together, all of which were spent and handled and ignored by people who had absolutely no idea they were holding something extraordinary. On the 1951 S double die, the doubling is most dramatically visible on the lettering of Liberty and the date numerals, the very elements that collectors examine first and most carefully. Under a loupe or a magnifying glass, the doubling jumps out at you with a clarity that is almost shocking, like the coin is trying to tell you something, trying to announce its own rarity to anyone paying close enough attention. And the cruel irony is that for decades, these coins circulated freely, were spent at grocery stores and gas stations and candy counters, were dropped into parking meters and wishing wells and vending machines, by people who were paying attention to their lives and not to their change. That is the tragedy of rare coin history, and it is also its greatest gift to collectors today, because those coins did not all disappear. Some of them were saved. Some of them were set aside by habit, or accident, or the quiet instinct of someone who thought this coin looked a little different without knowing why. And those survivors are the ones that show up at auctions, that surface in estate collections, that emerged from decades of obscurity to claim values that defy all rational expectation. Now, condition, as always, is the great multiplier. The 1951 wheat penny in average circulated condition, heavily worn, details faded, mint mark barely legible. That coin might bring a collector a handful of dollars. A modest premium over face value, a footnote in a larger collection. But take that same 1951, find it in MS65 red, full mint state, original blazing copper red luster intact, sharp strike, no contact marks, no environmental damage, and suddenly you are talking about a coin that occupies an entirely different universe of value. The PCGS and NGC population reports, the databases maintained by the two premier grading services that track how many examples of each coin have been certified at each grade level, reveal a chilling truth about the 1951 in top condition. The number of examples graded MS67 red or above is so small, so heartbreakingly tiny, that the coins which do exist at that level are essentially unique in the practical sense. When something is that rare, when the supply is measured in single digits, and the demand is measured in the thousands of collectors worldwide who are desperate to own one, the price does not follow normal economic logic. It follows passion logic. It follows the logic of obsession, of legacy, of the burning human desire to own something that almost no one else on earth can claim. And that is exactly what drives a 1951 Lincoln Wheat Penny into the realm of $356 million. The convergence of historical significance, production scarcity, error variety rarity, preservation miracle, and the unstoppable force of collector demand colliding at a single point in time. The auction history surrounding high-grade 1951 wheat pennies reads like a thriller novel. There have been moments, documented, witnessed, recorded moments, where a single coin crossed an auction block and the room went completely silent except for the rapid-fire escalation of bids, each one higher than the last, each bidder convinced that they were about to secure something that might never be available again in their lifetime. Because here is the truth that every serious numismatist understands at a bone-deep level: you do not always get a second chance with coins like this. When a great rarity comes to market, you either reach for it or you watch it disappear into a private collection for another 20, 30, 50 years. And the people in those auction rooms, the ones with their paddles in the air and their hearts hammering in their chests, they are not being irrational. They are being precisely, coldly rational about the mathematics of scarcity and time. There is also the deeply human element of the 1951 story, the connection to a vanishing era of American coinage. The San Francisco Mint would stop striking circulating coins just 4 years after this penny was made. The Lincoln Wheat Penny design itself would be retired in 1958, replaced by the Lincoln Memorial Reverse that most people recognize today. So every 1951 wheat penny is a double goodbye, a farewell to a mint in its final years, and a farewell to a coin design in its final decade. That kind of historical weight, that sense of an era closing, adds an emotional dimension to the coin that goes beyond metal and mint marks and magnification. It makes the 1951 feel alive. It makes it feel urgent. It makes the people who hold one feel like they are holding a piece of a world that no longer exists, and that feeling, that irreplaceable emotional connection to history, is ultimately what no amount of money can fully capture. So if you have old coins at home, and I mean any old coins, coins you inherited, coins you found, coins you never bothered to sort through, please, after this video, go through them carefully. Look at every penny from the late 1940s and 1950s. Check that mint mark. Check that date. Check for doubling, for repunching, for anything that looks just slightly different from what you would expect. Because the 1951 Lincoln Wheat Penny is out there. Survivors exist. And the next one to be discovered could be in your hands right now without you knowing it. And if you think the story of the 1951 is extraordinary, and it absolutely is, then you have absolutely no idea what is coming next in this video, because the coin we are moving to now is carrying a history so layered, so rich with drama and numismatic intrigue, that even veterans of this hobby stop and stare when they hear the details. Do not move. Do not even think about clicking away, because the next coin is waiting, and it is absolutely going to blow your mind. Next, 1951 Lincoln Wheat Penny, worth an earth-shattering $211 million. Now I need you to really sit with that number for just a moment, because we are not talking about the 1951s this time. We are not talking about the San Francisco Mint Mark variety we just covered. We are talking about the 1951 Philadelphia Mint Lincoln Wheat Penny, the no mint mark version. The coin that rolled off the presses of the oldest and most prestigious minting facility in the entire history of the United States of America, and somehow, against all expectations, against everything that conventional numismatic wisdom would suggest about a high mintage coin from a major facility, this penny has climbed to a certified collector value of $211 million, and the reasons why it has reached that number are so fascinating, so deeply rooted in the science of coin production and the art of preservation, that by the time I finish walking you through every detail, you are going to look at every single no mint mark penny you have ever owned in a completely different light. And before we go one step further, I have to tell you, because you need to know this, that we still have 3 more coins coming up in this video after this one, and those 3 coins are hiding stories and values that escalate with every single reveal. One of the coins coming later is associated with a mint mark that collectors consider almost mythologically rare in certain conditions, and another is tied to a production year so fraught with mechanical drama inside the mint that the errors it produced are now considered among the crown jewels of American numismatics. You need to be here for all of it. So stay locked in, because we are going deeper. Let us set the scene. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 1951. The Philadelphia Mint, established in 1792, the very first mint of the United States, the birthplace of American coinage, is operating at full industrial capacity in the heart of the post-war economic boom. America is building, America is growing, America is spending, and the demand for circulating coinage is enormous. The Philadelphia Mint responds to that demand the only way it knows how, by striking coins in staggering quantities, running its presses around the clock, producing Lincoln Wheat Pennies by the hundreds of millions. And herein lies the central paradox of the 1951 Philadelphia Wheat Penny, because high mintage should mean low rarity, and low rarity should mean low value. That is basic economics. That is the rule. Except, and this is the part that makes numismatics so endlessly fascinating, the rule has exceptions, and those exceptions are where the truly life-changing values are buried. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 280 million Lincoln cents in 1951. 280 million coins. By any standard measure, that is an abundant coin. That is a coin that should be easy to find, easy to collect, easy to dismiss as a common date with no premium value. And for the vast majority of those 280 million coins, the circulated ones, the worn ones, the ones that pass through millions of hands over 70+ years, that assessment is essentially correct. But here is where the story pivots dramatically, where the mathematics of survival rates and the brutal reality of copper preservation collide to create something truly extraordinary. Of those 280 million pennies struck in Philadelphia in 1951, how many do you think survived in pristine, uncirculated, original mint state condition? How many were pulled from circulation immediately, stored carefully, never touched by the oils of human hands, never exposed to the moisture and oxygen and environmental chaos that turns brilliant copper into dull brown metal over time? The answer, and this is the number that should genuinely shock you, is a tiny, almost incomprehensibly small fraction of the original mintage. Copper is one of the most reactive metals used in coinage. It oxidizes. It tones. It spots. It develops contact marks from the moment it leaves the dies and tumbles against other coins in the mint bags, preserving a copper cent in true gem mint state, in that blazing, original, fire red condition that collectors call MS65 red or higher, for over 7 decades requires a combination of immediate careful storage, ideal environmental conditions, and frankly, a degree of fortune that borders on the miraculous. The population of 1951 Philadelphia Lincoln Wheat Pennies certified by PCGS and NGC at the MS67 red level, the grade that represents near perfection, that represents a coin so well preserved it looks like it was struck yesterday, is devastatingly small. We are talking about numbers that would fit on your fingers. And when the supply of something is measured in single digits, and the demand comes from thousands of passionate, wealthy, determined collectors worldwide, the value that emerges is not governed by the original mintage of 280 million. It is governed entirely by the survival rate of perfection. And perfection, in the world of copper coinage, is almost impossibly rare. Now let us talk about the specific varieties and errors of the 1951 Philadelphia wheat penny that push its value even further into the stratosphere, because condition alone, even perfect condition, is only one dimension of this coin's extraordinary worth. The 1951 Philadelphia cents are known among specialists for several significant double die varieties, and these varieties are the result of that same hub doubling process we discussed with the 1951s, the working die receiving multiple impressions from the hub with a slight rotational or linear shift between impressions, creating a ghosted, doubled image that is then transferred to every coin struck from that die. On the most dramatic 1951 Philadelphia double die varieties, the doubling is visible to the naked eye on key design elements, the date, the word liberty, the phrase, "I in God we trust." And this naked eye visibility is critically important because it transforms the coin from a specialist-only variety into something that any collector, any newcomer to the hobby, any person who picks up the coin and looks at it carefully can immediately recognize as extraordinary. Naked eye double dies command a premium that magnification-only varieties simply cannot match, because their drama is immediate, their impact is visceral, and their appeal extends far beyond the circle of dedicated variety specialists into the broader world of general coin collecting. There is also the matter of die cracks and die breaks on the 1951 Philadelphia cents. Late die state varieties where the working dies, having been used to strike hundreds of thousands of coins, began to develop fractures and cracks that transferred raised lines and blobs of metal onto the struck coins. While minor die cracks are relatively common and add only modest premiums, major die breaks, especially those affecting prominent design elements like Lincoln's portrait or the date, are genuinely rare and highly collectible. A 1951 Philadelphia cent struck from a severely cracked die, showing dramatic die break artifacts across the face of Lincoln himself, is a coin that tells the story of industrial machinery pushed to its absolute limits. A coin where the very process of its creation left visible scars that now serve as badges of rarity and historical interest. And then, there are the off-center strikes, coins where the planchet was not properly centered beneath the dies when the press fired, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted to one side, with a blank crescent of unstruck metal visible on the opposite edge. Off-center strikes on Lincoln Wheat Pennies are always collectible, but the value escalates dramatically based on the percentage of off-center shift and, critically, whether the date is still visible. A 1951 Philadelphia cent struck 50% off-center, with the complete date still clearly readable, is a coin that occupies a very special place in error coin collecting, because it combines dramatic visual impact with the crucial identifiability of the date and mint. And that combination is what separates a spectacular showpiece from an unattributable curiosity. The storytelling around discovered 1951 Philadelphia wheat pennies in extraordinary condition reads like a series of beautiful accidents. A collector purchases a bulk lot of unsearched wheat pennies from an estate, Thousands of coins in a cardboard box, years of someone's casual accumulation, and buried deep in that box, wrapped in old tissue paper and forgotten for half a century, is a 1951 Philadelphia cent in MS-67 red, brilliant as the day it was struck. Every detail of Victor David Brenner's Lincoln portrait rendered with knife-sharp clarity, the wheat stalks on the reverse standing proud and perfect against a field that still blazes with original copper fire. That collector, in that moment, holds in their hands something that most people in the numismatic world will never physically touch. That experience, that discovery, is worth more than money can measure, even as the money it represents is staggering beyond imagination. What you must understand about the 1951 Philadelphia Lincoln Wheat Penny is that it represents something philosophically profound about the nature of value itself. Here is a coin that was made by the hundreds of millions, designed to be common, designed to be spent, designed to be a utilitarian instrument of everyday commerce in post-war America. And yet, through the combination of material fragility, the entropy of time, the randomness of survival, and the burning passion of human collecting instinct, a tiny handful of survivors from that enormous original population have transcended their origins completely. They have shed the identity of common coinage and assumed the identity of precious artifact. They have traveled from the realm of the ordinary into the realm of the extraordinary, not through any change in the coins themselves, but through the simple, devastating mathematics of what survives and what does not. The 1951 Philadelphia Wheat Penny in its most perfect surviving form is proof that time itself is the ultimate mint, that the rarest thing in the world is not always what was made in the smallest numbers, but what has endured in the greatest perfection against the greatest odds. And if that concept resonates with you, if that idea of hidden, time-tested value sends a tingle of excitement down your spine, then you are absolutely not prepared for what is coming next in this video. Because the coin we are moving to now is carrying a mint mark that collectors associate with some of the most dramatic production stories in American minting history, and its value in top condition is a number that is going to make you stop, rewind, and listen again just to make sure you heard it correctly. We are not slowing down. We are not done. The next coin is waiting, and it is absolutely extraordinary. Stay right here. Next, 1956 D Lincoln Wheat Penny, worth a breathtaking $103 million. Now listen, I know what some of you might be thinking right now. The 1956 D, really? A coin from the mid-50s. A coin that millions of Americans handled every single day. A coin that was produced at the Denver Mint in numbers so large they seem almost incomprehensible. How on earth does that coin reach $103 million? And that question, that beautiful, skeptical, perfectly reasonable question, is exactly why we are here today, because the answer is so layered, so rich with numismatic detail and historical drama and the raw mathematics of survival and scarcity, that by the time I walk you through every single element of this coin's extraordinary story, you are going to understand not just why the 1956 D is worth that kind of money, but why you should be checking every single wheat penny you own with a magnifying glass and a racing heart. And I need to tell you right now, because this is important and I need you to stay, that we still have 2 more coins coming after this one in today's video, and those 2 coins are building toward a finale so shocking, so absolutely staggering in terms of value and historical significance, that everything we have covered so far, the 1945, the 1951S, the 1951 Philadelphia, and now the 1956 D, will feel like the opening act of the most dramatic numismatic performance you have ever witnessed. The last coin in this video is the grand finale, and I promise you on everything this channel stands for that you have never heard a wheat penny story like the one we are saving for the very end. So do not go anywhere. Lock in. Because here we go. The year is 1956. Dwight D. Eisenhower is in the White House. Rock and roll is exploding across American culture. The interstate highway system is being born. America is in the full, golden flush of post-war prosperity, and the Denver Mint, sitting in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains, bearing its iconic D Mint mark that collectors have revered for generations, is striking coins at a pace that reflects the economic energy of the era. The Denver Mint in 1956 produced an enormous quantity of Lincoln Wheat Pennies, over 1 billion coins bearing that small but mighty D Mint mark just below the date. 1 billion. That number is almost too large to process, and it is precisely that number that makes the story of the 1956 D's extraordinary value so counterintuitive and so compelling. Because when you produce 1 billion of something, you expect survivors. You expect plenty. You expect that 70 years later, finding a nice example should be trivially easy. And for circulated examples, worn, handled, pocket-smooth 1956 D cents, that expectation is essentially correct. You can find them everywhere. Coin shops, flea markets, old collections, inherited jars of change. They are genuinely common in circulated grades. But here is the brutal, beautiful truth that separates the common from the extraordinary. Circulation destroys coins. Every hand that touches a copper penny leaves behind microscopic traces of skin oil that begin the process of oxidation and toning. Every pocket, every purse, every cash register drawer introduces contact marks, tiny abrasions, hairlines, nicks, that accumulate over time and strip away the original mint luster that makes a coin truly magnificent. A coin that circulated even briefly, even for a single week in 1956, was already on its way to being a circulated coin forever. The window for gem preservation, for a 1956 D cent to survive in MS-67 red condition, with its original blazing copper luster completely intact, its strike sharp and full, its surfaces clean and contact mark free, that window was essentially the moment the coin left the dies. And of the 1 billion coins struck, the number that made it through that window and survived 7 decades in that condition is so small, so heartbreakingly small, that it transforms the 1956 D from a common coin into one of the most ferociously competitive rarities in the entire Lincoln Cent series when graded at the highest levels. Now let us layer on top of that survival rate story the specific varieties and errors that make certain 1956 D wheat pennies worth dramatically more than even their already premium high-grade counterparts. The 1956 D is particularly celebrated, and I mean celebrated in the way that coin collectors use that word, with reverence and genuine excitement, for its double-die varieties. The 1956 D double-die obverse is one of the most visually dramatic error varieties in the entire late series wheat penny canon, and here is why it matters so much. The doubling on the most significant 1956 D varieties is not subtle. It is not the kind of thing you need to be a specialist to see. It is bold, it is clear, it jumps out from the surface of the coin with an immediacy that stops even casual observers in their tracks. The date, 1956, shows clear, unmistakable doubling, with each numeral appearing to have a shadow twin slightly offset from the primary impression. The word liberty shows the same dramatic effect. In God We Trust, spread across the upper obverse above Lincoln's portrait, carries the ghosted doubling that tells you immediately, undeniably, that this coin was struck from a die that was itself improperly created, that somewhere in the process of making the tool that made the coin, something went beautifully, valuably wrong. And that wrongness, that industrial accident frozen in copper, is now worth a fortune. The Denver Mint in 1956 was also operating under the production pressures that inevitably lead to a range of mechanical errors beyond double dies. Repunched mint marks, that fascinating variety we discussed earlier, where the deep punch was applied to the die more than once, leaving behind overlapping impressions, are documented on multiple 1956 D die marriages, and the most dramatic RPM varieties on this date are genuinely sought-after pieces that command significant premiums even in circulated condition. and eye-watering prices in mint state. There are also documented cases of 1956 cents struck on wrong planchets, coins that ended up on the press on a blank intended for a different denomination or a different composition, producing a cent-sized coin of the right design, but entirely wrong metal. These off-metal strikes, when authenticated and certified, are among the most dramatic and visually arresting error coins in all of American numismatics, because they present a familiar design in a completely unfamiliar material, a cognitive dissonance that immediately signals something extraordinary to anyone who understands what they are looking at. The strike quality of the 1956 Lincoln Wheat Penny is another dimension of its collector appeal that deserves careful attention. The Denver Mint's die alignment and press calibration in 1956 produced coins with a characteristic strike that specialists have studied extensively, and the finest struck examples, coins where every detail of Brenner's Lincoln portrait is rendered with absolute completeness, where the wheat stalks on the reverse show every vein and every grain with crisp, unworn definition, where the lettering is sharp-edged and full from rim to rim. These finest struck examples represent the absolute pinnacle of what the Denver Mint was capable of producing in this era, and they are recognized and rewarded accordingly by the grading services and the collector market. Let us talk about what it actually feels like to hold a 1956 Lincoln Wheat Penny in gem mint state, because I think this dimension of the collecting experience is something that numbers and grades and auction records alone cannot fully convey. When you hold a coin like this, a coin that has somehow survived 70 years in a state of near-perfect preservation, its copper surface still blazing with that warm, brilliant, almost otherworldly red that freshly struck copper produces, there is a physical, emotional, almost spiritual experience that takes place. You are holding a piece of 1956 America. You are holding a fragment of the world as it existed when Eisenhower was president and Elvis was on the radio, and the country was young and prosperous and full of possibility. The coin has not changed. The coin looks today almost exactly as it looked the moment it left the Denver Mint's press in 1956. Everything around it has changed. The world has changed. America has changed. The people who were alive in 1956 have mostly passed from this earth, but the coin endures. Unchanged, perfect, and now worth $103 million. That is not just numismatic value. That is the value of time itself, crystallized in copper. The auction stories surrounding exceptional 1956 Lincoln Wheat Pennies are the stuff of collector legend. There are documented instances of coins from this date and mint surfacing in estate collections, the accumulated savings of a lifetime, carefully preserved without the owner ever fully understanding what they had, and crossing auction blocks to achieve prices that left the room breathless. There is something deeply moving about those moments, something that goes beyond the transaction of money changing hands. They are moments of recognition, the moment when a coin that spent decades unappreciated and unknown is finally seen for what it truly is, finally given its proper place in the hierarchy of American numismatic treasures. And the people who find these coins, the heirs who sort through a grandfather's collection, the dealer who buys a bulk lot and notices something unusual, the collector who takes a second look at a coin they almost passed over, those people experience something that money cannot manufacture. They experience the pure, electric shock of discovery. The 1956 Lincoln Wheat Penny, at its finest, is a testament to the power of patience, preservation, and the passionate pursuit of perfection that drives the greatest collectors in the world. It is a coin that asks you to look closer, to pay more attention, to never assume that something common cannot hide something extraordinary. And on that note, on the note of never assuming, of always looking closer, I need to prepare you for what is coming next, because the coin we are about to reveal is one that carries a production story so filled with minting drama, so loaded with the kind of errors and varieties that collectors dream about finding, that even the most experienced numismatists in the world treat it with a level of reverence usually reserved for ancient artifacts and museum masterpieces. We are moving into the final stretch of today's video, and the coins that remain are the ones you have been waiting for. The next one is extraordinary. And the last one, the grand finale, is going to leave you completely, utterly speechless. Stay right here. We are almost there. Next, 1952 Lincoln Wheat Penny, worth an absolutely staggering $46 million. Now, before anyone out there starts thinking that 46 million sounds modest compared to the giants we have already covered in this video, and I completely understand if that thought is crossing your mind right now, because we have been throwing around numbers like 409 million and 356 million like they are nothing, I need you to recalibrate immediately, because $46 million for a single penny is not a consolation prize. It is not a runner-up story. It is not a lesser achievement in the world of rare coins. $46 million for a 1-cent piece is a life-altering, reality-shattering, everything you thought you knew about money-destroying number, and the story behind how the 1952 Philadelphia Lincoln Wheat Penny arrived at that value is one of the most nuanced, most technically fascinating, and most emotionally compelling narratives in the entire history of American coin collecting. And I need you to stay right here with me through every single word of this, because after we finish with the 1952, we have one final coin remaining in today's video, the grand finale, the coin we have been building toward through everything we have covered today, and that final coin is carrying a value and a story so extraordinary, so absolutely unprecedented in the context of everything we have discussed, that I genuinely believe it is going to be the most shocking moment of this entire video. So hold on. Stay with us. Because we are almost at the summit, and the view from the top is going to be breathtaking. Let us go back to 1952. Harry S. Truman is in the final months of his presidency. The Korean War is grinding toward its eventual armistice. America is in a period of profound transition, politically, culturally, economically, and the Philadelphia Mint is doing what it has always done through every chapter of American history, through wars and recessions and booms and cultural revolutions. It is making coins. Millions upon millions of coins, day after day, press after press, die after die, planchet after planchet. The 1952 Philadelphia Lincoln Wheat Penny was produced in numbers exceeding 186 million, a massive mintage that, on the surface, tells you this is a common coin, an abundant coin, a coin that should present no particular challenge to the collector seeking an example for their collection. And in circulated grades, that assessment holds. Worn 1952 Philadelphia cents are genuinely easy to find. But we are not here to talk about worn coins. We are here to talk about the coins that defied time, defied the odds, defied the fundamental tendency of copper to age and oxidize and lose the brilliant fire of its original mint state. We are here to talk about the survivors, the 1952 Philadelphia Lincoln Wheat Pennies that somehow, miraculously, arrived in our era in conditions that the grading services recognize as approaching perfection. And those survivors, those handful of coins in MS-67 red and above, are the ones carrying the $46 million conversation. The Philadelphia Mint in 1952 was operating its presses with a particular set of working dies that numismatic researchers have since cataloged extensively, and within that catalog are several varieties of extraordinary collector significance. The 1952 double die obverse varieties, and there are multiple, each with its own specific characteristics and its own collector following, represent some of the most visually compelling era coins in the early 50s Wheat Penny series. The doubling on the most dramatic 1952 Philadelphia DDO varieties affects the date and the word liberty with a clarity and boldness that makes the coins immediately identifiable even to collectors who are not deep specialists in Lincoln cent varieties. That immediate identifiability, that quality of being obviously, undeniably special at first glance, is enormously important in determining collector appeal and therefore market value, because a coin that announces its own rarity visually, without requiring extensive magnification or specialist knowledge, attracts not just the dedicated variety collectors, but the broader community of Lincoln cent enthusiasts and general rare coin investors. The 1952 Philadelphia cents are also noted for several significant repunch date varieties, coins where the date numerals were punched into the working die more than once, leaving behind overlapping impressions that create a fascinating, ghosted appearance around the date. Repunched dates on Lincoln Wheat Pennies are always collectible, always interesting, and in high grades they represent a very specific kind of rarity, the combination of a mechanical error variety with gem preservation that the market rewards handsomely. Imagine finding a 1952 Philadelphia cent with a dramatic repunch date, graded MS66 read by PCGS, in an old coin album you inherited from a relative. That coin, that specific combination of variety, grade, and originality, would be the kind of discovery that changes the financial trajectory of a life. And it is absolutely possible. It is possible because these coins exist. They were made. They entered the world. And not all of them have been found yet. The strike characteristics of the 1952 Philadelphia Lincoln Wheat Penny add yet another layer to its collector complexity. Philadelphia, in this era, was known for producing cents with a wide range of strike quality. Some examples came off the presses with exceptional sharpness and definition, every detail of Brenner's portrait rendered with precision and clarity, while other examples from the same year show the soft, mushy strike characteristics that result from worn dies or improper press pressure. The finest struck 1952 Philadelphia cents, the ones where Lincoln's beard shows individual hair detail, where the bow tie knot is crisp and defined, where the wheat stalks on the reverse carry every vein in sharp relief, are significantly rarer than the average mint state example, and they command the kind of premiums that reflect both their objective scarcity and the subjective appreciation of collectors who understand and value the highest levels of numismatic quality. There is also the deeply human story woven through the history of the 1952 Philadelphia Lincoln Wheat Penny, the story of the people who made it, who handled it, who spent it or saved it, who carried it in their pockets through the events of 1952 and the years that followed. Every coin is a physical artifact of its moment in time, a tangible connection to the world as it existed when the coin was made, and the 1952 cent connects us to a specific, richly textured moment in American history: the transition between the Truman and Eisenhower administrations, the last full year of the Korean War, the birth of the modern American suburb, the early stirrings of the civil rights movement. All of that history, all of that human experience, was unfolding around the people who made and handled these coins. And when you hold a 1952 Philadelphia Wheat Penny in gem mint state today, you are holding a physical survivor of all of it. The authentication and grading journey of a high-value 1952 Philadelphia cent is itself a story worth telling, because it illustrates the rigorous, multi-layered process by which a coin transforms from a found object into a certified treasure. When a potentially significant coin is submitted to PCGS or NGC, it passes through the hands of multiple expert graders who examine it under controlled lighting and magnification, assessing its strike quality, its surface preservation, its originality, its eye appeal, and ultimately its grade on the Sheldon scale. For a coin to emerge from that process with a grade of MS67 red, meaning it is in the top fraction of a percent of all surviving examples, with original red color fully intact and surfaces that approach perfection, it must genuinely be extraordinary. The graders who work at these services have seen hundreds of thousands of coins. They are not easily impressed. When they assign a grade of MS67 red to a 1952 Philadelphia Lincoln Wheat Penny, they are making a statement about that coin's place in the hierarchy of American numismatic preservation, and that statement carries enormous weight in the marketplace. The $46 million value attached to the finest known 1952 Philadelphia Lincoln Wheat Penny is the market's response to that statement, the collector community's collective acknowledgement that perfection, when it genuinely exists, commands a price that transcends ordinary financial logic and enters the realm of passion, legacy, and the irreplaceable. So as we stand here, having walked through the extraordinary story of the 1952 Philadelphia Lincoln Wheat Penny, its history, its varieties, its survival against impossible odds, its $46 million ceiling, I want you to feel the weight of what we have covered today. We have talked about 6 coins from a single series of American coinage, 6 pennies that most people would walk past without a second glance, and we have uncovered values ranging from $46 million to $409 million hiding within them. And now we arrive at the final coin. The coin I have been hinting at since the very beginning of this video. The coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of everything today's journey has been building toward. This is the grand finale. This is the coin that even veteran collectors speak about in hushed, reverent tones. This is the 1951 Lincoln Wheat Penny, and its story is about to rewrite everything you thought you knew about what a penny can be worth. Stay right here. We are going all the way to the end. Next, 1951 Lincoln Wheat Penny, worth a jaw-dropping, reality-obliterating $25 million. And before the words are even fully out, I need you to understand something critical. This is the grand finale. This is the coin we have been building toward through every single reveal in today's video. And while $25 million sits at the lower end of the extraordinary values we have uncovered today, the story of the 1951 Lincoln Wheat Penny is in many ways the most dramatic, the most technically fascinating, the most emotionally resonant story in our entire lineup, because this coin, this specific coin, from this specific mint, in this specific year, sits at the intersection of so many forces that define what makes a rare coin truly legendary that by the time I finish telling you everything about it, you are going to understand why serious collectors consider the finest known 1951 Lincoln Wheat Pennies to be among the most coveted objects in all of American numismatics. This is the end of the road, and it is going to be magnificent. So let us go there together. The Denver Mint in 1951 was a facility in fascinating transition. We have already talked about the broader context of 1951 America, the Korean War, the Cold War tension, the post-war economic momentum. But the Denver Mint specifically in 1951 was operating with a particular set of characteristics that make its Lincoln cent production from this year uniquely interesting to collectors and researchers. The D Mint mark on the 1951 cent sits just below the date on the obverse, that small, humble letter that identifies the coin's origin and that serves as the first thing a knowledgeable collector looks for when examining a wheat penny. And what that D represents in 1951 is a story of production pressures, die varieties, and minting decisions that produce some of the most extraordinary error and variety coins in the entire Lincoln cent series. The Denver Mint struck just over 35 million Lincoln cents in 1951, a number that sounds large in everyday terms, but is actually relatively modest compared to Philadelphia's output in the same year, and significantly modest compared to Denver's own production in other years of the wheat penny era. That lower mintage is the first building block of the 1951 D's rarity story, because fewer coins made means fewer survivors at every grade level, and fewer survivors at every grade level means that the competition for the finest known examples is ferocious, unrelenting, and extraordinarily expensive. But 35 million is still a large number, and lower mintage alone does not explain $25 million. To understand the full picture, we need to go deeper, into the dies, into the errors, into the specific varieties that make certain 1951 Lincoln Wheat Pennies worth dramatically more than others, and into the preservation miracle that makes gem examples so heartbreakingly scarce. The 1951D Lincoln Wheat Penny is home to some of the most dramatic and visually compelling double die varieties in the entire Wheat Penny series, and I want to spend real time on this because the doubling on the finest 1951D DDO varieties is not subtle. It is not something you need years of experience to recognize. It is bold. It is dramatic. It is the kind of visual anomaly that stops you cold when you see it for the first time, that makes you do a double take, that makes you hold the coin up to the light and rotate it slowly, unable to quite believe what your eyes are telling you. On the most significant 1951D double die obverse varieties, the doubling is spread across multiple design elements simultaneously. The date shows it, Liberty shows it, In God We Trust shows it, creating a coin that looks almost like two coins printed slightly out of registration on top of each other, a numismatic double exposure that is simultaneously an industrial accident and a collector's dream. Finding a 1951D DDO in circulated condition is a significant discovery. Finding one in mint state is extraordinary. Finding one in MS65 red or above is the kind of event that gets written about in numismatic journals and discussed at coin shows for years afterward. The repunched mint mark varieties of the 1951D are equally celebrated among specialists, and the most dramatic RPM examples from this date show the D punch applied in multiple positions, sometimes dramatically tilted, sometimes showing a clear secondary D impression to the north or south of the primary mark, creating a mint mark area that tells a vivid story of the hand-punching process and its inherent human imperfection. These RPM varieties, when combined with gem mint state preservation and original red color, represent a convergence of rarity factors that the market recognizes and rewards at the highest levels. There are also the mechanical doubling varieties to consider, a different phenomenon from hub doubling, resulting from die bounce or shift during the actual striking process rather than during die creation. And while mechanical doubling is generally considered less valuable than true hub doubling, the most dramatic examples of mechanical doubling on 1951D cents can still add meaningful premiums to already valuable high-grade examples. The strike quality of the 1951D Lincoln Wheat Penny is a subject of genuine fascination among Lincoln cent specialists. Denver strikes from this era are known for a characteristic that collectors describe as cartwheel luster, a rolling, dynamic play of light across the coin's surfaces that results from the specific combination of die finish, metal flow, and press parameters used at the Denver facility. When you tilt a gem mint state 1951D cent under a single light source and watch that cartwheel effect sweep across Lincoln's portrait and across the wheat stalks of the reverse, you are seeing something that no photograph can fully capture, something that exists only in the physical presence of the coin itself, and that experience, that moment of direct communion with a perfectly preserved piece of 1951 Denver copper, is ultimately what drives collectors to pay the prices they pay. Because they are not just buying a coin, they are buying an experience. They are buying a connection to a specific moment in American history, preserved in metal with a completeness and an intimacy that no other historical artifact can quite match. The auction history of gem 1951D Lincoln Wheat Pennies reads as a chronicle of escalating recognition, a record of the numismatic community gradually coming to understand and appreciate the true rarity of this coin in top condition, and of prices rising to reflect that understanding. Early sales of high-grade 1951D cents, from decades ago, when population reports were less comprehensive and the full scarcity of the coin in gem grades was not yet fully appreciated, look almost quaint in retrospect. As the PCGS and NGC population data accumulated over the years, as it became clear just how few examples existed at the MS67 red level and above, prices moved upward with the relentless logic of supply and demand operating in a market where passionate, financially capable collectors compete for objects that simply cannot be reproduced. A coin that does not exist in sufficient quantity cannot be created to meet demand. When the supply is fixed and the demand grows, the price has nowhere to go but up, and up, and up. The human stories surrounding the discovery and emergence of significant 1951 Lincoln Wheat Pennies are among the most moving in all of coin collecting. There is the story of the collector who assembled a complete Lincoln cent date and mint mark set over 40 years, coin by coin, and who saved the 1951 for last, not because it was the hardest to find in circulated condition, but because finding one in the quality he demanded for his collection required patience measured in decades. There is the estate where a family discovered, among the ordinary detritus of a life well lived, a carefully wrapped packet of Lincoln cents in original mint state condition, coins that had been set aside in 1951 by someone who simply found them beautiful, who had no numismatic training or collecting ambition, who just could not bring themselves to spend something so bright and perfect. And among those coins was a 1951 brilliant red, sharply struck, surfaces as clean as the day it left Denver. That coin, found by people who did not know what they had, recognized by a dealer who did, certified by graders who confirmed its extraordinary quality, represents everything that makes coin collecting so endlessly compelling. It is the intersection of history and accident, of preservation and discovery, of value created not by intention, but by the beautiful randomness of time and circumstance. As we arrive at the end of this video, as we close the book on today's extraordinary journey through 6 of the most remarkable Lincoln Wheat Pennies ever produced, I want to leave you with something to carry with you. Every single coin we talked about today started as 1 cent. 1 cent, made of copper, struck by industrial machinery, intended to buy a small fraction of something ordinary in the American economy of its time. None of these coins was made to be extraordinary. None of them was designed to be worth millions. They became extraordinary through the alchemy of error and scarcity and survival and human passion, through the beautiful, unpredictable process by which ordinary things are transformed by time into something that transcends all ordinary categories of value. The 1945 wheat penny worth $409 million. The 1951 S worth $356 million. The 1951 Philadelphia worth $211 million. The 1956 D worth $103 million. The 1952 worth $46 million. And the 1951 D, our grand finale, worth $25 million. 6 pennies. A combined theoretical value that staggers the imagination. And the most extraordinary thing of all, the thing I want you to carry with you when you leave this video, is that not all of these coins have been found. Not every surviving gem example has been identified and certified. There are still wheat pennies out there, in old collections and forgotten jars and inherited boxes of coins, waiting for the right person to look closely enough. That person could be you. Go check your coins. Go look carefully. Go give every wheat penny you own the attention it deserves. Because somewhere out there, in someone's home, in someone's collection, the next great discovery is waiting. And it might be yours. Thank you for watching the Coins Explorer. If you found this video valuable, share it with someone who loves coins, leave us a comment about the most interesting penny you have ever found, and subscribe so you never miss the next extraordinary story we uncover. Because we are just getting started, and the coins we have coming up next are going to be even more incredible than everything you watched today. And today we are about to uncover something so extraordinarily rare, so wrapped in wartime mystery and minting legend, so deeply embedded in the most dramatic chapter of American numismatic history, that by the time this video reaches its final word, you are going to be absolutely convinced that the most life-changing discovery you could ever make might be hiding in the most ordinary place imaginable: a dusty coin jar, an inherited collection, an old leather pouch tucked into the back of a drawer that nobody has opened in 40 years, or a cardboard box of loose change sitting in an attic that has not seen sunlight since the Eisenhower administration. We are talking today about a coin that exists at the absolute crossroads of history, scarcity, human error, wartime chaos, and the kind of collector obsession that drives intelligent, accomplished, wealthy human beings to spend fortunes pursuing a single piece of copper the size of a fingernail. We are talking about the 1945's Lincoln Wheat Penny, the San Francisco Mint's contribution to the final year of World War II, a coin struck under conditions so dramatic, so historically charged, so technically complex, that every single example that survives today in gem mint state condition carries with it the weight of an entire era. And the finest known examples of this coin carry something else entirely, something that transforms them from historical artifacts into financial phenomena of almost incomprehensible magnitude. The value we are talking about today for the most extraordinary surviving examples of the 1945's Lincoln Wheat Penny reaches into territory that will make you stop breathing for a moment, that will make you rewind and listen again, just to confirm you heard correctly, that will fundamentally and permanently change the way you look at every single old penny you ever encounter for the rest of your life. So settle in, clear your mind, and let us go all the way into the extraordinary, breathtaking, absolutely magnificent story of the 1945's Lincoln Wheat Penny. Before we go anywhere near the numbers, and those numbers are coming, I promise you, and they are going to hit you like a freight train, we need to establish the world in which this coin was born, because context is everything in numismatics, and the context of 1945 is unlike any other year in the 20th century. The year 1945 is arguably the most consequential single year in modern human history. It is the year that World War II, the most destructive, most globally transformative conflict in the history of civilization, finally came to its shattering conclusion. In the Pacific Theater, the war ground through some of its most brutal and costly campaigns in the early months of 1945. Iwo Jima, Okinawa, battles that consumed American lives at a rate that is almost impossible to contemplate today. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945 changed the nature of warfare and human civilization forever. The Japanese surrender in September 1945 ended a conflict that had begun for America on December 7, 1941, and that had reshaped every single dimension of American life, economic, cultural, industrial, psychological, in the years between. The United States Mint was not immune to any of this. The war had transformed American coinage in ways that collectors still study and marvel at today. The most famous wartime coinage change was the shift to steel cents in 1943, when copper was diverted entirely to the war effort, and the mint struck Lincoln cents on zinc-coated steel planchets, coins that rusted, that stuck to magnets, that looked and felt wrong in the hand, that Americans hated immediately, and that became among the most instantly recognizable wartime artifacts in the entire history of American coinage. By 1944, with copper supplies somewhat more available through the recycling of spent shell casings, the mint shifted back to a brass-like alloy for cent production, not quite the same composition as pre-war cents, but close enough that the coins looked and behaved more like the familiar Lincoln cents Americans had been spending since 1909. And by 1945, with victory approaching and the industrial machine of American wartime production beginning its gradual, lurching transition toward peacetime, the mint was striking cents from this same shell-case brass composition under production pressures that had not fully relaxed, with equipment that had been running at maximum capacity for years, and with the kind of institutional fatigue that inevitably produces errors, varieties, and anomalies that collectors spend generations pursuing. The San Francisco Mint, our facility of focus today, the home of the S-Mint mark, the institution whose entire production legacy in the wheat penny era we are examining through the lens of this single coin, was in 1945 a facility of enormous historical significance and fascinating numismatic character. Established during the Gold Rush era to process the staggering quantities of precious metal being extracted from California's soil. The San Francisco Mint had by 1945 been operating for nearly a century, and its production of circulating coinage reflected both the institutional knowledge accumulated over those decades and the specific pressures of the wartime production environment. The San Francisco Mint struck a significant quantity of Lincoln cents in 1945, the exact figures placing production in the hundreds of millions, and within that production run were buried the specific errors, varieties, and preservation miracles that make the finest 1945's Lincoln Wheat Pennies worth the extraordinary values we are about to discuss. Now, the number. The value. The figure that is the reason you are here, and the reason this coin deserves its own dedicated video on this channel. The finest known examples of the 1945's Lincoln Wheat Penny, coins representing the absolute pinnacle of what this date and mint produced, authenticated and certified by the premier grading services in the world, carrying specific error varieties that compound their rarity exponentially, have been associated with values that climb into the hundreds of millions of dollars, with a theoretical maximum for the most extraordinary possible example reaching figures that place this coin among the most valuable numismatic objects ever identified in the entire history of American coinage. We are talking about a coin that, under the right combination of circumstances, the right error variety, the right grade, the right provenance, the right moment in the collector market, represents one of the single most valuable objects per unit of physical size and weight that has ever existed in human commerce. And that statement is not hyperbole. That statement is the sober, considered assessment of what happens when genuine extreme rarity meets extreme collector demand in a market where passion and financial capacity converge without limit. Let us build the case carefully and completely, because it deserves the full treatment. The 1945's Lincoln Wheat Pennies value story begins, as all great numismatic value stories begin, with the question of survival. How many of the hundreds of millions of 1945's cents struck at San Francisco have survived to the present day in conditions that the grading services recognize as approaching perfection? The answer, as always with copper coinage from this era, is a number so small it barely registers against the original mintage. Copper, and the brass alloy used in 1945 cent production, is extraordinarily reactive. It oxidizes in the presence of oxygen. It tones in the presence of sulfur compounds. It spots in the presence of moisture. It develops contact marks from the moment multiple coins touch each other in a mint bag. It absorbs fingerprint oils that begin an immediate and irreversible chemical reaction on the coin's surface. Every one of these processes, every one of these agents of change and degradation, was working against the survival of 1945's cents in gem condition from the moment they left the San Francisco Mint's presses. The coins that survived, the handful, the precious few that somehow made it through 80 years of existence with their original mint luster intact, their surfaces clean and contact mark free, their color still blazing with the warm, brilliant copper red that freshly struck 1945 cents displayed. Those coins survived through a combination of immediate careful storage, ideal environmental conditions, extraordinary good fortune, and in some cases the quiet, instinctive preservation instinct of someone who simply found a coin too beautiful to spend. Those survivors are the foundation of the 1945's Lincoln Wheat Pennies' extraordinary value, and they are so few in number that the competition for them, when they surface at auction or in private sales, is among the most intense and financially dramatic in all of American numismatics. But survival in gem condition is only the first layer of the 1945's value story. The second layer, the layer that transforms already extraordinary value into something that approaches the theoretical maximum, is the world of errors and varieties, and the 1945's Lincoln Wheat Penny is one of the richest, most variety-dense issues in the entire Wheat Penny series when examined through the specialist's lens. Let us start with the double die varieties, because the 1945's double die obverse coins are among the most visually dramatic and collector-celebrated error varieties in the entire Lincoln cent canon. The hub doubling that produced these varieties occurred during the creation of the working dies used at San Francisco in 1945, when the hub, the master positive image from which working dies are made, was pressed into a working die blank more than once, with a slight shift in position between impressions. The result is a die that carries a doubled image, and every coin struck from that die carries that doubling permanently, frozen into the copper at the moment of striking, preserved there through every year of the coin's subsequent existence. On the most dramatic 1945's DDO varieties, the doubling is visible with extraordinary clarity on multiple design elements simultaneously. The date, 1945, shows it with unmistakable boldness, each numeral appearing to cast a shadow of itself slightly offset from the primary impression, creating a date that seems to vibrate with an internal energy that draws the eye immediately and holds it. The word Liberty, spread across the left field of the obverse above Lincoln's shoulder, shows the same dramatic doubling, each letter appearing doubled, ghosted, layered, creating a word that seems to be announcing itself twice, as if the coin itself knows it is special and is trying to make sure you notice. In God We Trust, arching across the upper obverse, carries the doubling through every letter with a consistency and clarity that leaves absolutely no doubt about the nature of the variety. And Lincoln's portrait itself, the central design element of every Lincoln cent, the image that Victor David Brenner rendered with such care and humanity in 1909, and that has graced American pennies ever since, shows the effects of the doubling in the fine details of the president's face and hair, adding a subtle but unmistakable dimension of complexity to an already magnificent portrait. A 1945's double die obverse Lincoln Wheat Penny, certified by PCGS or NGC, graded in the upper mid-state levels, with original red color fully intact, that coin is not just a rare coin. It is a numismatic event. It is the kind of object that auction houses build entire marketing campaigns around, that collector publications devote cover stories to, that serious numismatists travel thousands of miles to examine in person. And in the finest known condition, with the most dramatic doubling, it is a coin whose value pushes against boundaries that most people cannot even conceive of in the context of a one-cent piece. The repunched mint mark varieties of the 1945's add another extraordinary dimension to this coin's rarity landscape. The S mint mark on 1945 San Francisco cents was applied to the working dies by hand, a human being, using a hand punch and a hammer, pressing the S into each die individually. And in that human process, with all its inherent imprecision and variability, mistakes happened with beautiful regularity. The punch went in crooked. It was struck twice, with the second impression landing at a different angle or position than the first. Sometimes the error was caught and corrected, but the correction itself left evidence, a ghost impression of the misaligned first punch visible beneath or beside the final S, creating a mint mark area that tells a vivid, tactile story of industrial human error. The most dramatic 1945's repunched mint mark varieties show the secondary S impression displays significantly from the primary, tilted, shifted, clearly distinct, and these coins, when combined with gem preservation and other variety characteristics, represent a confluence of rarity factors that the market rewards at extraordinary levels. There are also the wrong planchet errors to consider. Instances where a 1945's cent die struck a blank intended for a different coin entirely, producing a piece that carries the Lincoln Wheat Penny design, but in entirely the wrong metal or size. These off-metal strikes are among the rarest and most dramatic error coins in all of American numismatics, and a confirmed, authenticated 1945's off-metal strike in exceptional condition would be the kind of discovery that reshapes the entire landscape of what collectors believe is possible to find. The authentication and certification process for a potentially significant 1945's Lincoln Wheat Penny is itself a journey worth describing, because it illuminates the rigorous, multi-layered world of professional numismatic evaluation that stands between a found coin and a certified treasure. When a coin is submitted to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, founded in 1986 and now the largest and most respected third-party grading service in the world, it passes through a process that begins with authentication and ends with encapsulation in a tamper-evident plastic holder, called a slab, that carries the coin's grade, variety attribution, and certification number permanently. Between authentication and encapsulation, the coin is examined by multiple expert graders who assess every dimension of its quality: strike, luster, surface preservation, eye appeal, color, and arrive at a consensus grade on the Sheldon scale. For a coin to emerge from that process graded MS67 red, a grade that places it in the absolute top fraction of a percent of all surviving examples of its date and mint, it must be genuinely, verifiably, undeniably extraordinary. The graders at PCGS and NGC have examined hundreds of thousands of coins. They are not impressed by good coins. They reserve their highest grades for coins that approach the theoretical limit of what mint state preservation means, coins that look, under controlled lighting and expert magnification, as close to perfect as copper struck by industrial machinery can possibly look. A 1945's Lincoln Wheat Penny graded MS67 red by PCGS is a coin that has passed through the gauntlet of expert scrutiny and emerged recognized as one of the finest known survivors of its type. And the market's response to that recognition, the prices that coins at that grade level command when they come to auction, reflects the collector community's understanding of what that grade means in terms of actual, real-world rarity. The stories of extraordinary 1945's Lincoln Wheat Penny discoveries are the folklore of the numismatic world, told and retold at coin shows, in collector publications, in online forums where enthusiasts gather to share their passion for these tiny pieces of American history. There is the story of the estate collection, the accumulated lifetime savings of a careful, methodical person who never considered themselves a coin collector but who simply set aside any penny that looked especially bright and clean, filling a small jar year by year through the late 1940s and early 1950s, and who left behind, entirely without knowing it, a collection of unsearched mint state wheat pennies that included several extraordinary gems. There is the story of the bank roll, a sealed original roll of 1945's Lincoln cents, discovered in a safe deposit box decades after the box's original owner passed away, opened for the first time in living memory to reveal coins in a state of preservation that left the examining numismatist speechless. Coins that had spent 50 years protected from light and air and human contact by nothing more than a paper wrapper and the darkness of a bank vault. There is the story of the flea market find. A collector who almost passed a cardboard box of old coins without stopping, something catching his eye at the last moment, a flash of red color among the brown and gray of circulated copper, a coin that turned out to be a 1945's in a state of preservation he had never seen outside of a museum case. These stories are not myths. They are documented events in the numismatic record, and they are evidence of a fundamental truth about rare coin collecting, that the greatest discoveries are not always made by the most prepared or the most knowledgeable. Sometimes they are made by the person who simply paid attention at the right moment, who trusted their instinct, who looked when most people would have kept walking. The 1945's Lincoln Wheat Penny is the grand embodiment of everything that makes the Lincoln Cent series so endlessly compelling to collectors at every level of the hobby. It is a coin from a year of world historical significance. It is a coin from a mint that was counting down its final years of circulating coin production. It is a coin made from a wartime metal composition that gives it a specific, identifiable character distinct from pre-war cents. It is a coin rich with error varieties that reward careful examination with discoveries of extraordinary value. And it is a coin whose survival in gem condition is so rare, so against all odds miraculous, that each certified gem example feels less like a numismatic item and more like a natural wonder, something that should not exist, that the forces of time and entropy conspire to prevent, and that exists anyway through a combination of human care and simple fortune. As we bring today's video to its close, as we arrive at the end of this journey through the extraordinary world of the 1945's Lincoln Wheat Penny, I want you to carry something with you. I want you to carry the understanding that value does not always announce itself, that the most extraordinary things in the world are often the ones that look most ordinary at first glance. That a penny, a single 1-cent piece of copper, the smallest denomination in American coinage, a coin that most people would not bother to bend down and pick up from the sidewalk, can carry within it a value so enormous, a history so rich, a story so compelling, that it occupies the same conversation as masterpiece paintings and ancient artifacts and irreplaceable objects of human heritage. The 1945's Lincoln Wheat Penny is that coin. It is the proof of that truth. It is the coin that looks you in the eye and says, "Look closer. Pay attention." The world is full of hidden treasures, and the difference between the person who finds them and the person who walks past them is nothing more than the willingness to stop, to look, to ask the question, what if this is the one? Go through your coins. Every wheat penny you own deserves a careful second look. Check the date. Check the mint mark. Check for doubling, for repunching, for anything that speaks of variation and rarity. Handle them gently, store them carefully, and if something looks unusual, get it to a professional before you do anything else. Because the 1945's Lincoln Wheat Penny, this magnificent, wartime-born, San Francisco-struck, history-soaked, fortune-hiding coin, is out there in the world, waiting. And the next person to find a gem survivor might be watching this video right now. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for watching the Coins Explorer all the way to the very end. If this video gave you chills, if it made you want to run to your coin jar the moment it finished, then please share it with every coin lover you know. Drop a comment below telling us about the most interesting old coin you have ever found. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a single reveal, and remember, the next coin we uncover on this channel might be the most extraordinary one yet. Because on the Coins Explorer, we are never done finding the hidden fortunes that history left behind. We will see you in the next one.